welcome to our sixth episode of Covid Convos. And I'm thrilled to be here and introduce you to Katie Comtois. I probably should have checked that pronunciation before we started this episode. I've just realized I missed that. But Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
So just a little bit of a background on Katie before we get into it. Katie is a board certified executive coach. She's a MAP student, and she also has a background in clinical counselling. I believe that's what we discussed before the show. So a very interesting mix of positive psychology with more of the traditional methods. And she lives in Denver, in the United States. So a really interesting time to, I guess, hear about what's happening over there with the coronavirus sort of starting to progress through the US. So I'm looking forward to hearing a lot, or we're looking forward to having hearing a lot about how everything's progressing and how she's seeing things in her immediate life. And I should also welcome Simon to the show. How are you, Simon?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Grigsy. Looking forward to another good episode.
Excellent. So, Katie, do you want to start off by saying sort of how you're seeing everything at the moment in your area?
Sure, happy to, and thank you so much again for having me on. So I live just west of Denver in Colorado, and the last week has been extraordinary. Really. I think it was this past Thursday when people really started realizing that the coronavirus was a true pandemic, and we all reacted pretty universally, I say, in my immediate area with panic, fear, anger, frustration, all of the really sort of dark emotions that we experience as human beings. Seeing the stock market start to go crazy, and also not getting super clear messages from our leadership here in the United States about what we should be doing was created like a frenzy. So, and ever since then, Thursday of last week, I think people have just been trying to take things hour by hour. Because things are changing so drastically, so quickly. So last week, I would say we were really, really, really concerned about making sure that the elderly in the United States was safe. And I would also say in general, younger people thought that we could live our lives pretty much close to like normal. And now 6 days later, there's a lot of self-quarantining. Young people are, restaurants are shut down, bars are shut down. Some cities are choosing to put, increasingly strict mandates on whether or not we're allowed to leave our homes. So things have escalated very quickly, as well as the numbers that we're seeing in the United States with cases of coronavirus, as well as deaths. Everything, like I said, hour by hour. It's getting a little crazier and crazier.
Wow, that certainly sounds like it, Katie. What's it mean for your sort of day-to-day life? Are you at home trying to keep work going over the internet, juggling kids? How's your daily routine been affected?
Yeah, it's affected everyone's daily routine. Luckily, my work as an executive coach is 99% remote anyway. So for me, from trying to keep a small business moving forward and my day-to-day work has basically stayed the same, with one major exception to that, which is my child is now home. So all kids in the United States have been mandated to stay home. So yes, I am a full-time working parent who's trying to navigate homeschooling with, again, trying to keep a small business afloat, and then also care for the best way I could possibly care for my clients and their organizations as well. So I work primarily with senior level executives, for the most part sitting in the C-suite of their orgs. And so I'm trying to provide whatever value I can provide to them to help them keep their businesses running, keep their employees engaged, happy, thriving as best they can in this crazy time of uncertainty. So it's crazy. And also my husband's home from home, working as well from home. So lots of moving parts.
And Katie, how are you, I guess, how are you going with working with those executives? What sort of things are you seeing in terms of themes across the board in your work?
Yeah. So it's a great question. One really strong theme I'm seeing across the board right now is how do my clients, the leaders of their businesses, balance the short-term urgency of a lot of the tactical things that they need to do as business leaders to ensure that their employees stay employed, stay engaged, stay involved in the business, and also calm their fears, right? So it's like, how do we make sure that the business moves forward while also caring for our employees as human beings, short-term needs, and also trying to figure out longer term, what is this pandemic going to mean for this unique business? Where do I see the opportunities in the future, that we can take advantage of now to set ourselves up for business post-crisis, global crisis? And that, as you guys know, it's really hard to do that when you're in survival mode. We've all find ourselves right now in this moment in survival mode. Our brains have not evolved all that much since, our caveman ancestors. So, right now, the future is uncertain. People are scared. People don't know what their futures look like. And what do we do as human beings? We catastrophize. We think worst case scenario. And when we're in that state of panic and when we're thinking sort of doom and gloom, it's really, really, really hard to think creatively, to think outside the box, to think in the future. And that's what these business leaders need to do in order to provide a vision for their employees on what's to come post-pandemic. It's a tough thing.
I could imagine, Katie. I don't run a business, but just for myself at home, I can definitely relate to what you're talking about there, about that sort of mindset closing in and with the fear and the uncertainty and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you could that you're sort of using or discussing with your clients about how to work or get around that sort of situation, which might be applicable to other people out there listening?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a few staples that we can all lean on as we're trying to, move forward and just get through the day-to-day as positively as possible. First and foremost, self-care is huge. And so in whatever way you can, my husband, daughter, and I have a 7-year-old daughter. My husband and I are all self-quarantined right now because my father is showing some signs of coronavirus, and we hope that he doesn't have it, obviously. But we find ourselves all of a sudden self-quarantining, and we realize that if we don't take care of ourselves, we will snap at each other. So making the time to do the important things like exercising, meditating, doing activities that invoke positive emotions and not just joy, but things like gratitude, right? Awe. My daughter, my husband, and I, every night we go to our whiteboard in our laundry room, and we write down the 3 things for which we're grateful for from that day. We try to savor those positive things that happened during the day. So self-care, eating as healthy as possible, sleeping our 8 hours, creating boundaries around the news, right? Creating boundaries around the darkness that is that streaming news. If I turn on the television, I know it's only going to be for 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm not going to let it stay on in the background. So self-care is number one for sure.
That was something that we've spoken about a bit, actually, the news, the fact you can really get hooked into this doomsday news feed because it's just so easily accessible. And I think the recommendation that we gave out was, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, because not a lot's going to really change in between those times. Otherwise, you can really get sucked in, can't you? And I've actually found myself not following that advice today. So even after speaking about it and discussing these concepts on a daily basis, you've really got to keep yourself in check. So it's interesting to hear it being brought up a number of times. And I guess that's the motivation behind what we're doing here, is to try and hopefully give people something that they can access where it is discussing the topic, but in a more positively framed, opportunity-based way. So I'm interested, Katie, to shift a little bit, if you don't mind for a sec, and just discuss a little bit about your experience at the UPenn MAP program, which is highly regarded, would be an understatement. And how, I guess, what you take from your time there, which was you said to us in 2012, you finished up. So interested to hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, the MAP program at the University of Pennsylvania, headed up by or founded by Dr. Marty Seligman, who is really considered to be the father of positive psychology, is an extraordinary program. I can't even come up with the words for how much that program meant to me personally as well as professionally. It provided me with the opportunity to figure out how to take the latest research that's being done in this relatively new field of psychology, positive psychology, and apply it to other interests of mine. So I came from a clinical background. I was a practicing mental health counselor when I went into the MAP program, and I came out of the MAP program knowing that I wanted to bring positive psychology back to business, which is where I started my career. And so over the course of a year at the MAP program, I learned about those things that enable us to thrive as individuals, as well as learn some really good practices and theory around what enables leaders and businesses to thrive. And so coming out of that program years ago, I decided to pursue a new career as an executive coach, applying the findings of positive psychology and that work. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I think when push comes to shove, what I highlight most often with my executive clients about positive psychology is the PERMA framework. What contributes to our well-being: positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning and purpose, and a sense of accomplishment. And there are so many unique and creative ways that business leaders can apply that, that structure to their lives as leaders within organizations, that I have really rich conversations with executives about PERMA. And I do add the V in PERMA V, so V for vitality, self-care, because I do find a lot of my executives can benefit from taking much better care of themselves and their health, and protecting the time to do that, in addition to all the other things.
Katie, do you find is there anything in the work with your clients, whether it's sort of normally or over the last week when things have really changed by the sound of it? For example, any of those elements of PERMA, including the V, are any of those sort of standouts to people sort of resonate with one or the other more?
Yeah, I would say meaning and purpose is a really popular and powerful tenet that resonates greatly with business leaders. Most of my clients are responsible for setting the strategic vision for their organizations. And my most responsible, values-driven clients are trying to establish a vision for their business that allows their employees to tap into something that's much larger than what they do on the day-to-day. It's not just a vision statement that they slap on the wall that sounds pretty or that means something to their shareholders. It's something that's really more values driven from the organization from the ground up, and that people can really make a very easy connection between what it is they're doing day to day to something much larger than themselves. So that's the one that jumps out the most.
Yeah, great. And I suppose, really applicable to the current situation. I think it was Viktor Frankl who said, if you have a why, you can put up with any what. So having that long-term overarching guiding sort of purpose for your life can really help you sort of get through the daily grind or the ups and downs or whatever it might be. So could be super helpful in these challenging times in particular.
Absolutely. I would actually say not only super helpful, but also so important, right? We need to be working towards a light. I do talk with my clients all the time about how if we are not consciously doing things that move us closer to a brighter tomorrow, it's very easy for us to get sucked into the darkness of what's happening right now in this moment during this crisis. So yes, so having that vision, that really strong sense of meaning and purpose is that light. And I think it's necessary for people to have that to work effectively through this.
Katie, I'm interested to hear about the, I guess, awareness of positive psychology and well-being within business leaders and businesses in general within the US. Like, for example, are people familiar with your qualification? Are people responsive when you say I work in or I apply positive psychology? What's sort of the feel?
It's a great question. And it's still all over the place. I should actually say it's all over the place, which is better than it was back in 2013 when I really started talking about positive psychology with potential clients and businesses. Back in 2013, 7 years ago, wow, it's crazy. People really had not yet heard of positive psychology. Now I would say it's a good mix. Most of my clients are tech companies, and for the most part, their chief of people and HR folks are familiar with positive psychology. And that's actually one of the reasons why I get hired to work with organizations, because of my credential. In other industries that I work with, I'm doing a lot of educating still on what positive psychology is.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we've spent a bit of time off camera talking about I guess the perception of our qualification or even just the field, I guess, to be less self-interested, just the field and the understanding of well-being. Because I guess what I've sort of seen over in Europe because I'm currently living in Belgium, is that there's less of an interest in well-being, even though that there seems to be a lot of talk about burnout here. You mentioned well-being, and people sort of give you that look. It seems to be that mindset of 20 or 30 years ago, where you're just about the bottom line. So I was interested with America sort of being the home of pos psych. Well, not sort of, it really is, because all the world conferences have been held there for up until last year, and the UPenn being the founding sort of university, to see whether that was really the hub as well, or but I guess it is a big country, so obviously still a bit of work to do there then.
big country with diverse pockets. For example, the finance industry is one industry that I would consider to be like sort of way behind in their awareness of some of the things that really extraordinary business schools are doing to connect the field of positive psychology and business, whereas tech is sort of ripe for this type of stuff, primarily run by millennials who are just more interested in the science of well-being. And I actually agree. See, I actually avoid using the word well-being when I'm talking to potential clients. I talk about positive psychology as being the science behind what makes people thrive. And that resonates. It's not about fixing people that are broken. It's about taking extraordinary people and providing them with the tools they need to fulfill their potential, to maximize their impact as leaders, specifically in my work. And that hits the mark. That resonates with most folks.
Yeah, it's so funny that probably the work that you would do would be very similar, if not the same, even though you're calling it different things. But to make it resonate, I guess, with the different audience, you need to sometimes use different terminology, which is, I guess, something that is just smart business, isn't it?
A lot of trial and error over the years. I've been self-employed for quite some time now, and a lot of experimentation with the language I use, and sort of how I choose to educate folks about what positive psychology might mean for their unique businesses. Yeah.
Well, my time has just gone off. I was going to say, Simon, did you have another question before we sort of wind up for the session?
I did have another question if I've got a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to sneak in a little correction if I can. I think I mentioned that quote before about if you have a why, you can put up with any what is coming from Viktor Frankl, the godfather of meaning and purpose. But I actually think it came from the philosopher Nietzsche. So before all of our followers out there jump on and in the comment section and get stuck into me, I thought I'd better just slip that in. Please correct me if I'm wrong, though, but that's just what I thought. But I just wanted to, just as part of our focus, Katie, of trying to not dwell too much on the negative or the downside, or it's still obviously paying attention to it, but also trying to look at the upside or the positives or the strengths or whatever it might be that are coming out of the current situation. I'm just keen to ask guests, has there been anything that's come out of this coronavirus that's surprised, inspired or encouraged you, or maybe even made you laugh?
There's a lot that's going on in our country right now that is inspiring. I have a really deep interest in the developing and growing field of conscious capitalism. And, these are the businesses out there that are not only interested in their quarterly earnings, the bottom line, the monetary value that they're providing to their shareholders. These are the businesses that are doing right by all of their stakeholders, including their employees and their vendors and the environment and society and community and their communities and all that. And I get daily emails from businesses that are sharing the wonderful actions that they're taking to take care of their local communities, to take care of the elderly in their communities, to take care of their employees who may not get a paycheck for the foreseeable future. It's not only inspiring, but it literally takes my breath away. How people the best of humanity is showing up, which is extraordinary. I also think it's really nice to see some of my clients who, our executives, busy business people, showing appreciation for the fact that now that they're working from home and their kids aren't in school, they get to take their lunch breaks and play with their kids outside and thoroughly enjoying that time and savoring that time with their kids. I think there are going to be a lot of really important lessons learned coming out of this crisis. And I just hope that life isn't business as usual once the coronavirus is no longer an imminent threat. I hope that people are learning really important lessons in this moment and won't forget what's most important.
Yeah, that's really such important advice. I mean, it is so easy to forget and move on from major life-changing events if you don't sit and find the time to reflect on what's important to you and what's changed for you, and continue to allow that to impact you beyond the event. I think there's just as many people who've had life-changing or near-death experiences who have then gone back and done the exact same thing that they vowed they'd never do again, as there are people who then go on and change it all and turn their life upside down. I'm just speaking completely out of my backside there, to use an Australian term. I have no idea on the numbers, but that's just a feeling that I've got, just keeping this show really science-based, Simon.
Just throw some numbers in, Griggsy. I misquoted someone, so you can throw in some numbers out of your backside.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen in the near and distant future. No one really quite understands the gravity of the situation that we're facing, and let's hope that it's not as bad as it could be. But there is something known as post-traumatic growth, right? On the heels of experiencing true trauma, there are people who come out of it becoming better people, having grown, having learned. And I just hope that the learnings that people are experiencing day to day about the bright side of humanity, I hope they stick. I hope they're sticky, so that we remember them, and that perhaps we change our lives. Once the crisis has passed, I'm hoping that people continue to do the good things that I see them doing today.
I think that's a really good spot to finish on, Katie. It's been really an amazing opportunity to chat with you, and we're well over our 20-minute time there, and I feel like we could just go on and on and on talking to you. I just want to thank you for being here and taking a chance on somebody who you don't really know, sending you a LinkedIn message based on a couple of posts that I saw you putting out that were just amazing. So thank you so much for taking the opportunity to and the time out of your day to chat to us, and the chance that I could have been a complete weirdo. So thank you very much for trusting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Time very well spent, and I hope that folks can learn a thing or two about how to better navigate the crisis that we find ourselves in today. Thank you for the time.
Thanks a lot, Katie.